السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته أعزائي طلبة الفرقة الثالثة شعب. كل عام وأنتم بخير بمناسبة شهر رمضان، ودعواتي إن الجميع يكون في أحسن صحة وفي أتم صحة وفي أحسن حال. معادنا مع المحاضرة رقم 10 وشابتر جديد بعنوان Differential Analysis The Key to Decision Making. Differential Analysis بمعنى التحليل التفاضلي، The Key to Decision Making دليلك لاتخاذ القرارات. In this chapter we will learn how can we make some decisions in different situations according to some analysis, and we will know some costs terms or some costs concepts before we take the differential analysis. برضو بحب ألفت النظر ان الشابتر دوت هو شابتر نمبر 12 لو احنا بنتكلم على كتاب 13th editions، او هو شابتر نمبر 13 لو احنا بنتكلم على ال 14th edition. تمام، لكن هو المسمى واحد او العنوان واحد اللي هو differential analysis. Okay, let's begin this lecture. As I have told you, at first we will learn some terms of costs, some cost concepts before we taking the differential analysis. So learning objective number 1 is identify relevant and irrelevant cost and benefits in a decision. So we will know what is the relevant and irrelevant cost and what is the relevant and irrelevant benefits. So let's know them in the next slides. When making decisions, you have to know some cost concepts. So let's read the sentences. The key to making such comparisons is differential analysis, which is focusing on the costs and benefits that differ between the alternatives. Costs that differ between alternatives are called relevant costs. Benefits that differ between alternatives are called relevant benefits. So our concentration will be on the relevant cost and relevant benefits. يبقى لما بنتكلم على decision making يبقى احنا هنا we are concerning on the relevant and relevant cost and relevant benefits. Okay, يبقى بنتكلم على او بنهتم بالتكاليف الملائمة. relevant cost معناها التكاليف الملائمة، و relevant benefits اللي هي المنافع الملائمة. طب ايه هي relevant cost؟ these costs that differ between the alternatives. وال relevant benefits برضو هي these benefits that differ between the alternatives. Okay, the question here, why distinguishing between relevant and irrelevant costs is important. So the answer here, distinguishing between relevant and irrelevant costs and benefits is critical for two reasons. يبقى عشان اعمل تفرقة بين الريليفنت والريليفنت cost and benefit مهم ليه يا جماعة؟ we have two reasons. The first one, irrelevant data can be ignored, saving decision makers tremendous amounts of time and effort. The second reason is bad decisions can easily result from irrationally including irrelevant costs and benefits when analyzing alternatives. يبقى these are the two reasons that make distinction between relevant and irrelevant cost and benefits is very critical. To be successful in decision making, managers must be able to tell the difference between relevant and irrelevant data, and must be able to correctly use the relevant data in analyzing alternatives. So, a distinction between relevant and irrelevant data is a very important thing in analyzing alternatives to make better decisions. تمام؟ يبقى أنا لازم أبقى قادر أفرق بين التكاليف اللي هي relevant، اللي هي relevant cost، اللي هي التكاليف الملائمة، و irrelevant costs اللي هي التكاليف غير الملائمة، وبرضو relevant benefits المنافع الملائمة، و irrelevant benefits المنافع غير الملائمة، لأن دي حاجة مهمة جدا when analyzing alternatives عند تحليل عند تحليل البدائل اللي بتساعدني to make better decisions. تمام؟ Okay, let's see the next slide. This slide clarifies what is a relevant cost. So a relevant cost is a cost that differs between alternatives. يبقى لما بنطلق على الكوست is relevant هي تكلفة ملائمة، يبقى الشرط اللي عندي it differs between alternatives، لازم تبقى تختلف بين البدائل. اوكي. Also a relevant benefit is a benefit that differs between alternatives. لما بنتكلم على benefit منفعة معينة، يبقى هنا بنتكلم على لما بقول relevant benefit منافع ملائمة، يبقى this benefit is differs or آسف هي benefit differs between alternatives، بتختلف بين البدائل. اوكي. We have some concepts to identify relevant costs, which is avoidable cost. What is avoidable cost? التكاليف التي يمكن تجنبها. It says here an avoidable cost is a cost that can be eliminated، التي يمكن الاستغناء عنها in whole or in part، سواء جزء منها أو بشكل كلي، by choosing one alternatives over another، لما نيجي نختار أحد البدائل ونستبعد بديل آخر. Avoidable costs are relevant costs. You have to know that the avoidable costs is a relevant cost. لو بنتكلم على avoidable cost يبقى هي من ضمن التكاليف من ضمن التكاليف الملائمة اللي هي relevant cost. Unavoidable costs are irrelevant costs. وعلى العكس بقى يبقى unavoidable cost اللي هي التكاليف التي لا يمكن تجنبها are irrelevant cost، هي تكلفة غير ملائمة، وبالتالي I don't rely on in the decisions، مش هعتمد عليها في اتخاذ القرار. Two broad categories of costs are never relevant in any decision. They include، يبقى عندي نوعين من التكاليف ان انا بستبعدها تماما من الديسيجن بتاعي وبتعتبر irrelevant بالنسبة لي، which are sunk costs and future costs that don't differ between the alternatives. طيب let's see the sunk costs. The sunk cost is a cost that has already been incurred and cannot be avoided regardless of what a manager decides to do. يبقى لو بتكلم على السانك كوست اللي هي التكاليف التكاليف بيسموها الغارقة، يبقى هي تكاليف حدثت بالفعل in the past، تمام، and I can't change it so it is not relevant. يبقى تكاليف غير ملائمة، وبالتالي I can't rely on in decisions. ما اقدرش اعتمد عليها في اتخاذ القرارات. Also future costs that don't differ between the alternatives. حتى لو كانت ال costs دي relates to the future but don't differ between the alternatives, it will be irrelevant irrelevant cost. وبالتالي I don't depend on this cost when making decisions. مش هقدر اعتمد عليهم في اتخاذ القرارات. يبقى we have two categories of costs that I can't depend on when making decisions, which are sunk cost and future costs that don't differ between the alternatives. Okay. This slide tells us the steps that can use to make decisions. Relevant cost analysis, a two steps process. So you have to go or to make two steps when making decisions. Let's see, the term differential cost was also introduced before. In managerial accounting, the terms avoidable costs, differential cost, incremental cost, and relevant cost are often used interchangeably. يبقى all these costs or all these terms are often used interchangeably. بيتم استخدام هذه الترمز او هذه المصطلحات بالتبادل، يعني كلها مصطلحات مصطلحات ذات معنى ذات معنى واحد. تمام. To identify the costs that are avoidable in a particular decision situation and are therefore relevant, these steps should be followed. يبقى we have to follow these two steps when making decisions. The step number one, eliminate costs and benefits that don't differ between alternatives. So step number one, you have to eliminate the costs and benefits that are irrelevant. Irrelevant means that don't differ between alternatives. هستبعد كل التكاليف والمنافع اللي هي تعتبر غير ملائمة. طب يعني ايه غير ملائمة؟ اللي هي ما بتختلفش بين البدائل. تمام. وبالتالي it will not affect the decision. مش هتأثر في القرار بتاعي. طيب step number 2, use the remaining costs and benefits that differ between alternatives in making the decision. هستخدم التكاليف والمنافع الباقية بعد ما استبعدت اللي هي irrelevant for making decision لما باجي اخد القرار. The costs that remain are the differential or avoidable costs. يبقى remaining cost بنعتبرها differential or avoidable cost اللي هي التكاليف التي يمكن تجنبها او التكاليف التفاضلية. These costs that we are relying on هي دي اللي بنعتمد عليها. تمام. يبقى احنا بنمشي التو ستيبس دول to make a better decision. Here I want you to know another concept which is different costs for different purposes. The concept of different costs for different purposes is basic to managerial accounting. يبقى دي حاجة مهمة. different cost for different purposes. أنا بستخدم تكاليف معينة لأغراض معينة. What does it mean? It means that costs that are relevant in one decision situation may not be relevant in another context. تمام. لو أنا شايف إن دي تكاليف ملائمة في موقف معين فهي قد لا تكون ملائمة في موقف in another situation. Thus, in each decision situation, the manager must examine the data at hand and isolate the relevant costs. تمام. يبقى ده برضو بيعتبر an important concept اللي هو different cost for different purposes. To clarify what we have recently discussed, let's take this example. Racket Corporation is considering two alternatives that are code named M and N. Costs associated with the alternatives are listed below. So we have two alternatives in two columns, alternative M and alternative N. And we have for information about supplies costs. For M, 31,000, for N, 52,000. Assembly costs for M, 33,000, for N, 33,000. Power costs for M, 23,000, for N, 27,000. Inspection costs for M, 15,000, and for N, 21,000. So the requirement is which costs are relevant and which are not relevant in the choice between these two alternatives. So the requirement A, he wants you to determine which costs is relevant and which costs are not relevant. Requirement B, what is the differential cost between the two alternatives? He also wants to determine the differential cost between the two alternatives اللي هي التكاليف التفاضلية بين هذين البديلين اللي هم M and N. Okay, to answer these questions, let's see the next slide. To identify relevant and irrelevant costs, you have to go back to the definition. Relevant costs, these costs that differ between the alternatives. Irrelevant costs, these costs that not or don't differ between the alternatives. So, according to this definition, supplies costs are relevant because costs differ between alternatives. Assembly costs not relevant since the costs don't differ between alternatives. Power costs are relevant because costs differ between alternatives, and inspection costs are relevant costs since costs differ between alternatives. يبقى احنا بنقدر نحدد which cost is relevant and which one is irrelevant according to the definition. اللي بيختلف between alternatives بتبقى relevant واللي ما بيختلفش يبقى irrelevant. To identify differential costs, supplies cost is 31 in for alternative M and 52 for alternative N, so the difference between them is 21,000. So the differential cost of the supplies costs equal 21,000. For assembly cost, differential cost equals 0 because the two costs or the two alternatives are the same. واحنا قلنا دي irrelevant costs. Power costs for M 23, for N 27, so the differential cost equal 4. The difference between the alternatives equal 4,000. For the inspection costs, the differential cost equal 6,000 because the alternative M equal 15,000 and alternative N equal 21, so the difference between them is 6,000. The total differential cost equal 31,000, which is the summation of the all costs, all differential costs, 21 plus 4 plus 6,000. So that total differential cost between the two alternatives equal 31,000. يبقى كده احنا حسبنا يا جماعة differential cost اللي هي التكاليف التفاضلية اللي هي between these two alternatives بين البديلين اللي هو M and A and N. اوكي ده بس كان example to clarify the idea of alternatives اللي هي the idea of relevant and irrelevant costs between alternatives. تمام. Here we are gonna learn a new concept, total and differential cost approach. That means when we decide which alternative is a better one, we can use two different ways or two different methods. The first one we can use total cost approach or differential cost approach. To show this in details, let's take this example. Alex company is considering a new labor saving machine that rents for $3,000 per year. The machine will be used on the company's butcher block production line. Data concerning the company's annual sales and costs of the butcher blocks with and without the new machine are shown below. This data concerns units produced and sold for the current situation and for the proposed situation. For the current situation, 5,000 units, and for the proposed situation, 5,000 units. Selling price 40. Direct material cost 14. Direct labor cost 8.5. Variable overhead cost per unit 2 and 2. Fixed costs, other fixed costs 62,000. Fixed cost, rental or new machine, rental of a new machine. For current situation 0, for the proposed situation 3,000. To decide which alternatives is the better one, we can use two different ways. We can use the total approach that can be done by computing the net operating income for each situation and choose the situation with the higher net operating income. يبقى في الحالة دي أنا بحسب net operating income for the current situation and net operating income for the proposed situation, and then we choose the higher one. The second way, we can use differential approach that can be done by focusing on just the relevant cost and the benefit. That means ignoring the irrelevant cost and the benefit. في الحالة دي يا جماعة, when we are using a differential approach, we are concerning the relevant and irrelevant costs and benefits. بركز على التكاليف والمنافع الملائمة فقط وبتجاهل, and we are ignoring the irrelevant cost and the benefit, وبتجاهل التكاليف والمنافع غير الملائمة. To do that, let's see the next slides. To answer the previous example using the two method or the two ways, the total cost and the differential cost, we can use the data above to answer this example. Given the data above, the net operating income for the product under the two alternatives can be computed as follows. Here we are using the two ways, the total approach and the differential approach. If we use the total approach, we will prepare income statement for the current situation and another income statement for the situation with the new machine. Okay, if we are using the differential cost, the differential cost is the difference between these two situations. Look at the bottom of the slide. Look at the net operating income. Note that the net operating income is 12,000 higher with the new machine, so that is the better alternative. Note also that the 12,000 advantage for the new machine can be obtained in two different ways. It is the difference between the 3,000 net operating income with the new machine and the 18,000 net operating income for the current situation. يبقى نقدر اوصل للديفرنشال كوست اللي هي 12,000 بطريقتين. الطريقة الأولى اللي هي الفرق بين 30 اللي هي الكرنت سيتويشن والبروبوزد سيتويشن، هي 30 والكام وال18. تمام. الطريقة الثانية اللي هي another way, it is also the sum of the differential costs and benefits as shown in the last column of the table. يبقى الطريقة الثانية اقدر اوصل برضو للنت اوبريتنج انكم اللي هي 12,000 عن طريق ان انا اعمل summation للبنفيتس اللي هي differential benefits and costs في last column ده هيطلع لي النت اوبريتنج انكم. يبقى اما هعمل comparison between the two income statements for the current situation and the proposed situation، او هعمل summation للديفرنشال للديفرنشال costs. okay. When we are calculating the differential cost and the benefits, I say current situation minus the proposed situation. Current situation minus the situation with the new machine. يعني كأني بقول ال current situation أطرح منه ال situation with the new machine. So a positive number in the differential cost and the benefits column indicates that the difference between the alternatives favor the new machine. A negative number indicates that the difference favor the current situation. يبقى لو كان الرقم موجب يبقى الرقم ده في صالح في صالح النيو ماشين، ولو كان سالب يبقى في صالح يبقى في صالح النيو في صالح الكرنت سيتويشن. اوكي. And a zero in that column simply means that the total amount for the item is exactly the same for both alternatives. Thus, because the difference in the net operating income equals the sum of the differences for the individual items, any cost or benefit that is the same for both alternatives will have no impact on which alternative is preferred. This is the reason that costs and benefits that don't differ between alternatives are irrelevant and can be ignored. If we properly account for them, they will cancel out when we compare the two situations. Note that we can arrive at the same solution much more quickly by completely ignoring the irrelevant costs and the benefit, such as the selling price per unit and the number of units sold don't differ between the alternatives. Therefore, the total sales revenues are exactly the same for the two alternatives as shown in this table. Because the sales revenue are exactly the same, they have no effect on the difference in net operating income between the two alternatives. That is shown in the last column in this table, which shows a zero differential benefit. يبقى لو بصينا على السيلز هلاقي ان السيلز between the two alternatives are the same, so the differential cost and the benefits equal the zero. We can notice that the direct materials cost per unit, the direct variable overhead cost per unit, and the number of units produced and sold don't differ between the alternatives. Consequently, the total direct materials cost and the total variable overhead cost are the same for the two alternatives and can be ignored. The other fixed expenses don't differ between the alternatives, so they can be ignored as well. يبقى لو احنا شايفين عندي ال costs and benefits that can be ignored اللي هي السيلز والdirect materials والdirect variable overhead per unit عندي ال fixed expense اللي هي other fixed expense. All these costs are the same between the two alternatives, though they can be ignored with difference between them equal zero as differential costs. تمام؟ اوكي. طيب السؤال هنا which costs differ between the two alternatives. لو بصينا هنلاقي هنقول ممكن نقول we can say that the only costs that differ between the two alternatives are direct labor costs and fixed rental cost of the new machine. Hence, the two alternatives can be compared only on these relevant costs. يبقى لما هاجي هعمل comparison between these two costs، ولو انا هستخدم ال differential cost approach هقدر اعمل comparison between these two alternatives according to these two costs. يبقى هم دول ال relevant costs بالنسبة لي اللي انا هقدر that I can make my decision according to these costs. دول اللي انا هقدر اخد القرار بناء عليهم. تمام؟ Okay. Let's see the next slide. As I told we can rely on only the relevant costs to make our decisions. It says here, indeed, the only costs that do differ between the two alternatives are direct labor costs and the fixed rental cost of the new machine. Hence, the two alternatives can be compared based on only these relevant costs. So we can efficiently analyze the decision by looking at the different costs and the revenues and arrive at the same solution by doing this analysis. So to compute the net advantage of renting the new machine, we can compute the decrease in direct labor costs. 5 units at a cost saving of 3 per unit. Increase in fixed expense 3,000. So the saving will be 15,000 and the increasing in fixed expense will be 3,000. So net annual cost saving from renting the new machine equal 12,000. So the decision is to rent this machine because it achieves saving equal 12,000. يبقى احنا ممكن نستخدم ال differential analysis اللي هو بالشكل ده depending on only the differential costs and benefits. تمام؟ يبقى هنا we have two ways to decide which one or which alternative is better. One اللي انا بستخدم قلنا التوتال ابروش او بستخدم الديفرنشال ابروش. طبعا الديفرنشال ابروش مختصر، لكن we have to determine the relevant costs and benefits and irrelevant cost and benefits. Okay. To answer a question of which way or which approach is much more desirable, it says here using the differential approach is desirable for two reasons. The first one, only rarely with enough information be available to prepare detailed income statements for both alternatives. يعني بقول لك هنا بيفضل الديفرنشال ابروتش لسبب، اول سبب ان نادرا ما يتوافر معلومات كامله to prepare a detailed income statement لاعداد قائمه دخل تفصيليه. Mingling irrelevant costs with irrelevant cost may cause confusion and distract attention away from the information that is really critical. السبب الثاني بيقول هو اختلاط التكاليف اللي هي الملائمة والغير الملائمة قد يسبب نوع من الارتباك او نوع من عدم التأكد او التحقق، وبالتالي بياخد الانتباه بعيد عن المعلومات اللي هي بالفعل معلومات مهمة ويمكن الاعتماد عليها. يبقى دول these are two reasons that make the differential approach is much more desirable comparing with the total approach. So after we discussed some concepts related to decisions, let's take the first decision, which is learning objective number 2. This decision relates to whether a product line or a business segment should be dropped or retained. So the learning objective 2 is to prepare an analysis showing whether a product line or other business segment should be dropped or retained. يبقى هنا بناخد قرار، برضو عندنا two alternatives. يا اما هنبقي على احد القطاعات اللي عندنا او برودكت لاين، احد خطوط الانتاج نبقي عليه يعني يستمر، او ناخد قرار انه تو ستوب او تو دروب او يتوقف. يبقى هنا القرار او two alternatives whether to decide to retain or to drop a specific business segment or a specific product line. طيب علشان نعرف ازاي how can we analyze this decision, let's see the next slides. Let us start with the first decision, which is adding or dropping segments. This decision is one of the most important decisions manager make, is whether to add or drop a business segment. Ultimately, a decision to drop an old segment or add a new one is going to hinge primarily on the impact the decision will have on net operating income. So that means when dropping the segment, increasing the net operating income, so the decision will be to drop this segment. But if dropping the segment will decrease the net operating income, so the decision will be to don't drop this segment. To assess the impact the decision will have on net operating income, it is necessary to carefully analyze the costs. To know how to analyze the costs, let's see the next slide. To understand how can you make a decision whether to drop or retain a specific segment or a specific product line, let's take this example. Due to the declining popularity of digital watches, Lovell Company's digital watch line has not reported a profit for several years. Lovell is considering discontinuing this product line. To make this decision, we have two approaches that we can rely on. The first approach is a contribution margin approach. You have to follow the decision rule. The decision rule is this company, Lovell, should drop the digital watch segment only if its profit would increase. يبقى هنا يا جماعة أنا هتبع الرول ديت، وهنا هو بيقول إن هو الشركة يجب إن هي تدروب the digital watch segment، إن هي تستبعد القطاع ده أو البرودكت لاين ده if its profit would increase. وده في حالة إذا كان الاستبعاد أو إذا كان إبعاد هذا القطاع سيزيد من البروفيت بتاعها، وهنا يقصد التوتال بروفيت اوف ذا كامباني. تمام، يبقى هنتبع الرول ديت. طيب، Lovell will compare the contribution margin that would be lost to the costs that would be avoided if the line was to be dropped. طب هنعمل ده ازاي؟ فهنا بيديني الايه؟ بيديني الطريقه اللي انا اخد بيها الديسيجن دوت. هعمل comparison between، انا هفترض في الاول ان انا I will go in the direction that I will drop the product line. همشي في نفس الاتجاه اللي انا هفترض ان انا هعمل dropping للبرودكت لاين. طيب لو هعمل dropping للبرودكت لاين، انا هنا عايز اعمل comparison between the contribution margin lost، هامش الربح المفقود طالما هعمل له dropping، and the costs that would be avoided، والتكاليف التي يمكن تجنبها according to the dropping decision. طبعا لما هعمل dropping يبقى فيه many costs that can be avoided. تمام، يبقى انا الكومباريزون هنا بين الحاجتين دول يا جماعه لو انا بستخدم الكونتريبيوشن مارجن ابروتش، اللي هو الكونتريبيوشن مارجن that would be lost، هامش الربح او هامش المساهمه اللي انا هفقده نتيجه الدروبنج بتاع اللاين دوت، وال costs that would be avoided والتكاليف اللي ممكن تجنبها برضو according to ايه according to the dropping decision. خلاص هعمل comparison between them و according to this comparison I can make my decision. طيب let's look at the solution in the next slide. As I told you, if you want to make this decision whether to drop or retain a specific segment, you have to compare two things. The first one is to compare the contribution margin lost according to dropping this decision with the total costs that can be avoided if we drop this decision. So first of all, you have to prepare a segment income statement for digital watches. This statement follow the contribution margin approach. So sales minus all variable costs. So the result will be contribution margin, which is 300,000. We will compare this number with the total fixed expenses or total fixed costs. We have many fixed expenses: general factory, salary of line manager, depreciation of equipment, advertising, rent of the factory space, general administrative expenses. So the total fixed expenses will be 400,000. So we are gonna to compare 400,000, which represents the total fixed cost, with the contribution margin lost, which equal 300,000. So the net operating income or the net operating loss will be 100,000 because the contribution margin lost is lower than the lower than the net the total fixed costs. يبقى هنا انا بوضح يا جماعه كاني انا ماشي في الاتجاه ان انا هاخد قرار باذن الله I will drop the product line. طيب في الحاله دي انا هفقد ايه؟ هفقد الكونتريبيوشن مارجن، هيبقى كونتريبيوشن مارجن لوست، وبالنسبه لي هيبقى كونتريبيوشن مارجن لوست ده هامش ربح مفقود فقدته. طيب هوفر ايه السيفنجز عندي اللي هي الفيكسد اكسبنسز كلها. ففي الحاله دي انا هوفر 400,000 وهفقد 300,000. تمام. طيب يبقى هنا عندي النت اوبريتنج لوس up till now I don't make the decision. To make the decision you have to get some information about the fixed expenses, because some of the fixed expenses can be avoided and the others cannot be avoided. So it says here, an investigation has revealed that the fixed general factory overhead and fixed general administrative expenses will not be affected by dropping the digital watch line. Not be affected means it is a cost that can be ignored. يبقى ملهاش تأثير، يبقى هنعتبرها as a sunk cost or the cost that can be ignored. ملهاش تأثير يبقى هنتجاهلها هنتجاهلها تماما. تمام. بالنسبة لنا هتبقى irrelevant costs. بالنسبة لنا هتبقى irrelevant costs. تمام. The fixed general factory overhead and general administrative expenses assigned to this product would be reallocated to other product lines. هيبقى ليها استخدام تاني في ال other product lines، في خطوط انتاجيه خطوط انتاجيه اخرى. تمام. يبقى هنا هنحدد ال relevant cost وال irrelevant cost، اللي هي الكوست that can be ignored والكوست that cannot be ignored. طبعا اللي هو قايل عليهم دول اللي هم will not be affected by dropping the digital هيعتبروا هيعتبروا irrelevant، غير ملائمين، وبالتالي we can ignore them، وهنبقي بس على the rest of these costs. تعال نشوف كده. Here he wants to give us another information about the equipment used to manufacture digital watches. It says here the equipment used to manufacture digital watches has no resale value or alternative use. That means all the costs of the equipment and the depreciation we can be ignored. يبقى دي حاجة كمان هنضيفها للانفورميشن اللي هو عطاها لنا، اللي هي all the costs that relates to the equipment and the depreciation will be ignored. هنتجاهل depreciation اللي هو relates to this equipment وبيعتبر irrelevant costs. تمام. يبقى هنركز بس على على relevant costs او relevant fixed expenses. Now we are gonna make this decision depends on or according to this information. تمام. يبقى هنعمل comparison between the contribution margin lost اللي هو 300,000 and the fixed expenses اللي هي relevant fixed expenses اللي هي the costs that cannot be ignored. تمام. اللي هي التكاليف اللي انا لا يمكن تجاهلها، واللي هي بتعمل اللي هي that affect the decision، اللي هي بتؤثر في القرار. Let's see the final solution in the next slide. So to make this decision, we are going to compare the contribution margin lost if digital watches are dropped, which is 300,000, with the fixed costs that can be avoided, which are salary, advertising, and rent. These costs that can be avoided. These are the relevant costs, which equal 260,000. So we are comparing 260,000 with 300,000. So the net disadvantage will be 40,000. That means if we drop the digital watches segment, the company will lose $40,000. اوكي. يبقى احنا هنا عملنا مقارنة بين يا جماعة؟ بين الكونتريبيوشن مارجن لوست، هامش الربح اللي انا هفقده if the digital watches are dropped، بالتوتال fixed expenses اللي هي can be avoided، التكاليف التي يمكن تجنبها اللي هي relevant costs بالنسبة لي. فلقيت الفاينل ريزلت اللي هي net disadvantage، يعني هلاقي ان هحقق لو خدت قرار زي ده هحقق loss بتساوي 40,000، وبالتالي our decision will be we will retain this segment. We will retain this segment. That means we will not drop this segment. هنبقي على على البرودكت لاين ده او على القطاع ده، ونتخذ قرار بعدم استبعاده. تمام. يبقى انا بالشكل ده بستخدم الكونتريبيوشن مارجن approach. As I told you before, we can make this decision whether to drop or retain a specific product line using two approaches. We have discussed the first one, the contribution margin approach, and now we are gonna to use the second approach, comparative income approach. It says here the level solution can also be obtained by preparing comparative income statements showing result with and without the digital watch segment. يبقى في الحالة دي we will make or we will prepare a comparative income statement, two income statement, one with the digital watch segment and the other one without digital watch segment. And we will make the comparison between them to show which alternative is the better one. So let's look at the second approach. As you see, we will compare a comparative income statement, one column for keeping digital watches and the other one for dropping digital watches, and the third column to compute the difference between them. To compute the difference here equal dropping digital watches minus keeping digital watches. أنا بطرح drop minus keep. Okay? As you see, the sales will be 500,000. The difference between them is 500,000 in minus. The total variable expense will be 200,000. So the contribution margin will be 300,000 if we keep the digital and 0 if we drop the digital watches. So the difference between them equal 300,000 in minus. That means a contribution loss. It says here at the bottom, if the digital watch line is dropped, the company loses 300,000 in contribution margin. معناه لو احنا خدنا القرار to drop the digital watches فكانت الشركة هتخسر الخسارة هتبقى عبارة عن ايه؟ عبارة عن الكونتريبيوشن مارجن اللي هو 300,000. تمام؟ Let's continue this exercise. Now let's look at the fixed expenses to determine which element is relevant and which one is irrelevant. Look at the general factory overhead. The general factory overhead are the same for the two alternatives. So it says here in the box, on the other hand, the general factory overhead would be the same under both alternatives, so it is irrelevant. يبقى يا جماعة, if the costs in the two alternatives are the same, this element of the fixed expenses will be irrelevant. يبقى can be ignored. يبقى هقدر ايه؟ هتجاهله ومش هاخده معايا فين في الديسيجن بتاعي. تمام؟ يبقى هعمل ignoring in general factory overhead because this costs is irrelevant. Okay, let's continue. Look at the another element of the fixed expenses, which is salary of line manager. If we drop the digital watches, the salary of line manager will be disappeared. So the salary of the line manager will not be the same in the two alternatives. In this case, the salary of the line manager is relevant cost. We have to take this element in our consideration when we making this decision. So it says in the box, the salary of the product line manager would disappear, so it is relevant to the decision. تمام؟ يبقى ده هناخده في الحسبان لما نيجي ناخد القرار. Let's continue the solution of this exercise. Look at another element of the fixed expenses, which is depreciation. The depreciation here is a sunk cost. بيعتبر يا جماعة depreciation تكلفة غارقة. يبقى I can't rely on in this decision. مش هقدر اخده معايا فين في القرار دوت. يبقى I can't take this element in my consideration when making this decision. Also remember that the equipment has no resale value or alternative use, so the equipment and the depreciation expense associated with it are irrelevant to the decision. طالما هي irrelevant يبقى it is they can't be avoided، وبالتالي مش هاخدها فين في الاعتبار. هلاقيها the same between the two alternatives. هنا 50,000 وهنا 50,000. تمام. يبقى احنا بنعتمد على the costs or the expenses that can be avoided، اللي انا هقدر اتجنبها if we make this decision. طيب let's continue the rest of the solution. To finalize this solution and make the decision, we can compare the two alternatives, to keep the digital watch with to drop the digital watch line. If we are comparing the two income statements, we can use the same solution. The complete comparative income statements reveal that Love would earn for $40,000 of additional profit by retaining the digital watch line. We can say this result with other way, and we can say that the company will lose $40,000 if we drop the digital watch segment or the digital watch line product. تمام. يبقى احنا ممكن نقولها باكتر من طريقه. المهم احنا بنستخدم هنا الايه comparative income approach، هيوصلني لنفس النتيجه اللي وصلني ليها الcontribution margin approach. اوكي. Here it says beware of allocated fixed costs. هنا بيحاول يلفت نظرك ان احنا نعمل allocation للفيكسد cost بطريقه صحيحه. Why should we keep the digital watch segment when it's showing a loss of 100,000؟ لو رجعنا تاني هلاقي قبل ما احنا نطبق الابروتشز ديت كان الديجيتال واتش سيجمنت كان محقق loss of 100,000. طب ازاي احنا خدنا قرار to keep it؟ ده علشان كان معمول له wrong allocation of the fixed costs. اوكي. هنا بيديك نفس الإجابة. why we keep the digital watch although it achieves a loss. فهنا قلنا خلي بالك من من allocation of the fixed cost. the answer of our question lies in the way we allocate common fixed costs to our products. الطريقة اللي أنا بخصص بيها common fixed cost اللي هي التكاليف الثابتة العامة على على المنتجات بتاعتنا. طيب هنا بيقول لي including unavoidable common fixed costs make the product line appear to be unprofitable. زي ما حصل كان في including لل unavoidable common fixed cost ضمن fixed expenses او fixed cost، فخلى البرودكت لاين اللي هو بتاع الديجيتال واتش looks like أو looks unprofitable، أقل ربحية. تمام. Our allocation can make a segment look less profitable than it really is. لو احنا خصصنا وعملنا wrong allocation، فهيظهر السيجمنت او البرودكت لاين بتاعنا بصورة اقل ربحية من الواقع او من الحقيقة اللي عليه. لكن لو احنا خدنا في الاعتبار بتاعنا if we take in our consideration the relevant cost only that can be assigned to the line to the product line, the product line will be will appear in a right manner، هيظهر بشكل صحيح، وهيبقى لو هو profitable هيظهر بالاماونت الصحيحة بتاعته اللي هي right amount of profits. وده اللي حصل مع مع الديجيتال واتش برودكت لاين. اوكي، يبقى هنا هو بيحاول يقول لك خلي بالك من طريقة الالوكيشن of the common fixed costs. At this point we arrived at the end of this lecture 10. We have discussed in this lecture some costs concepts, and we also have taken a new decision, which is drop or retain a specific segment. هنكمل بإذن الله بقى الشابتر ده آخر شابتر معانا في المنهج بتاعنا. هنكمل الشابتر ده على مدار محاضرتين تانيين هيتم رفعهم خلال اليومين القادمين بإذن الله. وبعد كده هنشوف ممكن نعمل محاضرة as a revision before you will take the exam. دعواتي لكم بالنجاح والتوفيق والسلامة بإذن الله، ونلتقي على خير في المحاضرة القادمة، وكل عام وأنتم بخير.